If you're dealing with pain in the lower half of your body, a big piece to understand is that the foot, the ankle, and the calf, specifically the Achilles tendon, handles a lot of the load. So whether you're walking, hiking, jogging, running, or jumping, that foot and ankle has to be able to absorb a lot of that force. If that's not happening, it's going to be getting transmitted up the chain and giving us problems at the lower limb. So I'm going to take you through a structured program that's going to address the 3 big areas that we can improve. And when they start moving better and absorbing force how they were designed to, then you're going to notice that pain gets a lot better. Even if the problem's not right at the foot, the ankle, and the Achilles, it's still going to help a ton. But the biggest place that we see this pay off is in knee pain, tight calves, Achilles tendonitis, plantar fasciitis, those types of injuries, or if you just know that you have a really stiff ankle and it limits you in things like your squat and your lunge. So we're going to break this down into 3 different sections. We're going to address the foot, the ankle, and the Achilles, and finally the calf. And the structure is going to be that we're going to smash that tissue, whether we're using a ball, a foam roller, or a barbell, and then we're going to put stretch on that tissue, and finally we're going to take it through its new range of motion and build some strength in it. Now, I definitely recommend that you do all 3 components, but if you know you have a specific problem in one of those areas, you can obviously spend more time in that area or pull those exercises out. And my recommendation is getting this done 2 to 3 times a week. I'll put down in the description all of the exercises, time, or the number of reps that you want to do with it, so you can easily reference that. So to get started, we're going to need a couple of things. You're going to want a lacrosse ball or something similar, a foam roller or a barbell, ideally a slant board, or modify something similar to a slant board and something that you could step up onto. And that's all you're really going to need. I've kept the equipment to a minimum so that it can easily be done from home. So the very first thing that we want to do is go ahead, take your shoes and your socks off, because we want that foot to be able to feel the ground. That's a big thing a lot of us are missing, is we're putting our feet into these tight shoes and they're restricting the amount that we feel and the ability of that foot to splay out as we push into the ground. So we'll take our shoes and our socks off, we'll set those aside and get into these exercises. So the first one is going to be very simple. You're going to take a lacrosse ball or something similar to that, and we're going to start rolling out our feet. We're going to set a timer for 2 minutes, and what you want to do is start moderate pressure, rolling on the outer edge and working your way to that medial edge, that inside edge. And what we're doing first is just trying to hunt down any of those sore spots and say like, hey, where is the most tension, soreness in that foot? And then you spend the remainder of the time into that area. So for a lot of us, that's going to be in this medial arch, just working into that for about 2 minutes. If you find a spot that's really gets you, what you can do is put the ball in there and then take your toes and curl them over, lift them up, curl them over. And basically what we're doing is we're pinning down the tissue in that spot, and then we're forcing that movement and the gliding of those tissues a little bit. So you're going to start by spending 2 minutes on that. So you'll set a timer, do your 2 minutes, switch over, do the same thing on the other foot, and then we're going to get into big toe extension. So what we want to do for that is just get down onto the ground here. And if we're working on this right foot, it's going to be tucked in and with this big toes tucked underneath like that. And we're going to start high and we're just going to kind of slide back. And as we slide back, we feel more tension go onto that big toe. Then we come back forward, and it's just a simple rock. Doesn't feel like a ton, but I want you to think about shifting over a little bit so that you load into that big toe more than the rest of your toes. And as you come up, you're kind of pushing through that big toe to get you up. And you're going to do about 10 reps there. And then you're going to switch over and do the same thing on the other side. Once we've done that, we've kind of freed up the tissue. We put a bit of stretch specifically on that big toe and worked on big toe extension. Now what we're going to do is we're going to just work on the pronation of that foot. So what that means is that this arch, as we walk, it naturally wants to drop a little bit as we put pressure through our foot. Then as that pressure comes off, it naturally lifts back up again. That's one of the big problems we see with people that have foot issues, is that we're not getting good pronation. So that could mean that you actually have a really high arch, kind of like I do, or you have a very low arch that's very flat. Either way, you still need to work on this exercise because it's going to help in both senses. You're going to get the pronation and the supination of that foot as you go through this. So keys here are, if we're working this left foot, we're feeling weight through the heel the entire time, but that weight is shifting from being at the back of the heel to about mid-arch, but we're still keeping contact with that heel and the weight shifting through. We're still feeling it into the heel, but we're shifting into that midfoot and then eventually over the toes a little bit more. One of the biggest things I want you to watch for as you go through this is that we don't clench down with our toes. So watch these other 4 toes to start trying to grip into the ground. And that's what we want to avoid. As soon as that starts to grip, we're walking up through our foot that we want to have relaxed so that the joints can move. So we're going to start at a negative shin angle, which means that this angle is here. This would be positive shin angle. So we're moving from negative to positive while keeping a bit of weight into that heel the whole time. And we're just shifting through to about midway through our foot with feel the weight. Then we're coming back out of that. And as you're doing those reps, you're thinking like that there's a little grape or a finger or something under here, and you're trying to kind of squish that and let that arch drop down a little bit. So what it looks like, this is going to be our half rep, where we're just letting that weight come to about mid-foot. And then when we do our full reps, we're going to let it drive a little bit further so that the knee's driving over that mid-foot onto our toes a little bit. We're still contacting with the heel. We're still dropping through that arch, and we're not letting those toes grip. So that's our half rep pronation, when you just bring it to about mid-arch, and full rep is when you're going to bring it all the way over the toes. Toes aren't going to grip, that arch is going to drop and raise back up as you move back into that negative shin angle. It's up, positive shin angle, it's dropping down. So that's going to cover off our foot. Now the next exercise we want to do is going to start us into our ankle work. So one of the most common injuries we have at the ankle is what's called an inversion ankle roll, which means that we're rolling this way when we roll our ankle as opposed to rolling it this way. We kind of have natural blocking features in there so that we don't really get this type of a roll very often, but this is a lot more common. So if we can get better at controlling that ankle through this, then we're going to have less ankle problems. Or if you have a very stiff ankle because you've already rolled them a lot in the past, this is going to help. So what we want to do, we're going to spend 2 minutes just in this. If you need to grab something like the wall or a dowel to help balance you, that's fine. If you have a dowel, it looks like this. We're going to hang out in this, set a timer for 2 minutes where we're just pushing into that a little bit so we feel a stretch kind of out through here. So we're just kind of hanging out on that side, full 2 minutes. And then what we're going to do, we're going to start building up the amount of tension that we're putting into that. So it's like we're trying to push that edge of the foot into the ground and kind of sweep it off to this side without it actually moving. We're just putting that pressure into the ground, and we build that up gradually to 100% of the force that we feel comfortable doing. If there's pain, you've gone too far. If there's a little bit of discomfort, that's okay, but you want to be pushing into that. And we're going to build up from 20%, 30%, 50%, 70%. We're going to go 80, and then 100% pushing down into that for 4, 3, 2, 1. Then we immediately, without moving anything there, we switch over, and it's like we're trying to lift that foot up and squeeze in through this side. So like we're trying to do, instead of being out here, like we're trying to lift this up into this motion instead of out into this. We're now trying to bring it in this way. So we're staying in this. We've just pushed it in the ground, and immediately as soon as we switch, it's like we're trying to lift that arch up towards our inner leg, and we're gonna hold that as hard as we can, immediately to as hard as you can for 10 seconds. So we'll go 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then we're just going to relax. So we're not going to actively pull up anymore. We're not going to push down. We're just going to hang out back in kind of that starting position that we started with a bit of a stretch. We're going to go through that 2 times before switching over to the other side. So again, that's you get into this position, you feel a bit of that stretch on there as you're pushing that edge of the foot into the ground just a little bit. 2 minutes like that, and then you actively ramp up to 100% pushing. As soon as you hit that 100% and hang out there for a second or two, then you're going to flip that over and try and pull that arch up without really moving the foot. And you're gonna hold that for 10 seconds, then you're gonna relax and just hang out in this for another 10, and that's gonna give that joint and those tissues time to adapt to that new positioning that that ankle is capable of. Once you're done that, you might wanna give it a little shake out, little circles, free that ankle up a little bit, and then what we're gonna do is our wall eversion inversion exercise. All we're gonna be doing for this one is leaning up against the wall, lift the heels up, and we're gonna roll our feet to the outside and to the inside, and we're gonna do 20 reps of this. And the big important piece is like, don't get a big bend through your knees happening. Keep your knees kind of straight and locked out, and you're trying to bring them in as much as you can. Come back up, roll to the outside, touch down, and again, you're out as far as you can go, and we're doing 20 reps of that. And that's gonna cover off our ankle, and now we get to move into the calf. So we have two options for the first one. We can either use a foam roller if we don't have access to a barbell, or if we find it too uncomfortable. Ideally, what we want to get to, even if it's quite uncomfortable, is using a barbell, because it's going to allow us to get more pressure deeper and create like a deep wave of pressure. One of the biggest problems I see when people try and foam roll their calves, they're not getting enough pressure in and they're moving way too fast. Foam roller variation of this is going to look like is you're going to set that foam roller just below your knees, and you're going to slowly, with both legs on the foam roller, roll all the way down, thinking a slow, deep wave of pressure. Both legs on a foam roller is our most regressed version if you're really sore through those calves. And if you find a tender spot, what you can do is just kind of hang out on it, let the pressure of the foam roller do its work, or even take that ankle and start bringing it back and forth, and that just moves the tissue under that foam roller a little bit. And you'll go all the way down until you hit just below your ankle there at your Achilles. More advanced version, once you can handle that pressure, take the one leg, put it on top of the other to add a little bit more pressure, and think that slow, deep wave still. And then eventually what you get to is using the barbell, and that's the best variation for us because we're able to put more pressure deeper into that calf and target specific areas that are tender for us. So what that looks like, I'll show you next. Very best option here is going to be taking this barbell, lifting it up, letting it just sit onto those calves, and then you just take your hamstrings and use that to push down on the calves up at this higher portion, and then eventually you just take your hands and you roll those calves out very, very slowly, very deep, and you can adjust pressure by lifting a bit off with your hands or pushing down a bit depending on the sensitivity there. But a good 1 to 2 minutes, slowly rolling down, finding those most tender spots and letting the pressure just do the work for you. And you'll go all the way right down until you get onto that Achilles tissue. And then you're gonna stop and go back up to the top if you still have time to do a second pass. Now, once you've done that, you have the option of using either a slant board or a step. I'll show you both. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna do some little calf raises here. So all we're gonna do, get up nice and high, and then tempo coming down, so we're slow coming down, taking 2 to 3 seconds, come down. And what we want is using either the slant board or some kind of a step where we're able to drop our heel below our foot. So most of the time when we're doing calf work, we're just doing it here and coming to here, but a lot of us are doing uphill activities, hiking, that kind of stuff, where we are actually on a hill which requires that calf length to be even greater than just at the ground. So another example of that would be if we get up to something like this, we can see it even more why we need that length. If we're not getting that, then that's pulling on that tissue every time we're going to try and go out and use it, and that's why we're ending up with a lot of pain. So we can do that again with a slant board here where we're going up, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. If you can do this quite easily, you can go to a single leg, and you can even load that by holding a dumbbell in your hand or switching to something like a Smith machine if you have access to that. Now what that looks like if you don't have a slant board is you're going to use a step at your house or something like this, and you're going to do the same idea, calf raise up, coming down, dropping down below that kind of neutral level to get that extra stretch onto the calf. So we've smashed the calf with the foam roller or the barbell, and now we're just working on putting a stretch by dropping it down that extra little bit. Next, we're going to finish off with some calf strength work. So we're going to lay flat on our back. Our heels, we're going to lift them up a little bit. So if you come too far out, this isn't going to work well. You're not going to be able to lift the heels. And if you come too close into your butt, you're going to get a lot of lift. So we want kind of mid-ground there. We're going to lift those heels up, and we're going to give ourselves a posterior pelvic tilt. So like we're trying to tuck our tail between our legs here. So we're going to lift up just a little bit, tuck in, and then we're going to maintain that calf isometric there, and we're just going to shift to one side and hold that for 30 seconds. And then we're going to come down, kind of reset a little bit, switch over, same thing on the other side. We want to make sure we're not getting too high up and that we're keeping that posterior tilt. So again, lift the ankles up, get into that tilt, make sure we're not too high off, get into that isometric. And what you're really going to feel is you want to imagine kind of right in this portion that you're squeezing this together as hard as you can. You almost want to feel a crampy feeling right in this area. What we're going to do for our last exercise is we're going to raise that front leg and still do nice little heel lifts with it. So we're going to drop into kind of a lunge position here. Find what's comfortable height for you so that we're about 90 here. And then we're going to lift and drop back down into this. So if you get a shake through your leg, that's totally normal and fine. That's the nervous system figuring out something that it hasn't done in a long time. So like I said at the start, those exercises you're going to go through 2 times a week, 3 if you have the time for it. You can pull out different sections if you really need them, but I like to go through the whole thing at least twice a week. And what you're going to do is those foot exercises, followed by the ankle, followed by the calf. And that's going to clean up a lot of those lower body injuries and kind of nagging issues that you have, because your foot is going to start working a lot better, that ankle is going to move better, that Achilles is going to absorb force better, you're going to have more length through the calf so that you stop getting those knee, ankle, and foot injuries. And again, just a reminder, I'm going to drop into the description how many sets and reps you want to do of all these and how you're going to do this section, then this section, then this section. If you have any questions, just drop them in the comments. Happy to answer those for you.